Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're going to have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Janja Lalich. We're going to be starting shortly, but before we start, please share the talk. And like I know that some of you don't want to share it on your personal Facebook, but you can share it to different groups that you belong to. This is such an important talk because really it's rare that we talk about the topic of parental alienation from a perspective of a culture. Even though, when I talk to so many parents, so many rejected parents out there, you feel helpless because you feel like your children are being trapped in a cult. But yet, um, I don't think we ever brought in a cult expert to actually talk about this. So this is a very special, very important conversation. So please help us spread the word. So if you are there, please let other people know that the event is live. Please post your question. I'm interested to know where you are calling in from. If you are a mother, if you're a father, how old your children are. Please post your comments. And then if you have any question for Dr. Lalich, please again post it, and then we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible. So let me introduce her properly. Today, our guest is Dr. Janja Lalich. She's the world leading expert in culture. Her specialty particularly is looking at the power relationships, and she wrote some very important books. For example, let me just get the names. Um, Sorry, actually I forgot. I'm not sure where I put the list of name. I apologize. We're gonna get the list of name, but I think one of the books is About the Choice. Some other book is Escaping Utopia, talking about how to leave a cult. I think I forgot Dr. Lalich. I think one of the book.
Your life.
Sorry. Take Back Your Life. Yes, Take Back Your Life. Another book. Yeah. So some very important books out there about escaping the cult culture, and she also wrote a lecture for TED. So TED Education did a lecture that she wrote about cult culture. So you can search for that online as well. Dr. Lalich, thank you so much for being here. So could you please tell us a little bit before, I mean, for parents, rejected parents in a parental alienation situation, we always feel like our children are being trapped in a cult. So let's talk about what are the characteristics of a cult. Let's see if our impressions are actually right.
Well, a cult typically has an authoritarian leader who is sometimes referred to as the charismatic leader. Secondly, there is what I call a transcendent belief system, which means that there's an ideology that the person has to become devoted to, and within that ideology is a requirement to transform yourself, so that you are accepted as a follower and that you will reach whatever the salvation is being offered by that leader. And then finally, there are what I call these intertwined systems of influence and control. So we have, coercion in both in influence, which is sometimes more subtle, and then the more direct coercion of control methods. And I think in this context, it doesn't exactly fit the model of a classic cult or a typical cult, but we could see that the one parent may be looked at as the leader, who is imparting this belief system of hate the other parent, right, and then imposing different ways in which the children have to follow along with this and conform to what the dominant parent is teaching, and so it could be described as what I call a family cult, which I talk about in my book Take Back Your Life.
Yeah, I think it's very similar actually. Just like you said, there's a charismatic leader, which is in this case, the child look up to the other parent. The child look up to the favored parent, and then there's a requirement of commitment, right? Because if the child express any love for the other parent, the child will be frowned upon, or sometimes even being punished. So sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's like blatant. So there's that, and there's definitely that hierarchy separation, and so I think it's very similar in that sense. And then sometimes they bring in other people like step parents or other family members, or maybe like the older children that already been converted, right?
Yes.
Would you talk about how members being recruited in a cult? How do they get influenced?
Well, people get recruited typically by someone they know, someone they trust, so they take that first step. And then once they're in, there'll be a process. It's always a process. It may, excuse me, it may start out very subtle. And, every time you take a step, you're in a little bit deeper. And one of the I think one of the most important mechanisms of manipulation is peer pressure, because we respond to peer pressure almost more than anything else once we reach a certain age. So, it's kind of the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when in a cult, do as the other cult members are doing. So there will be role models. Sometimes people are assigned a person to be their check partner, or their, sort of the person they're supposed to confide in, but then who's also reporting back. So there's kind of this constant watching and constant mentoring and teaching, whatever the indoctrination program is, whatever the desired outcome is, which is, conformity of some sort or another, so that you become, an agent of the cult leader, so to speak.
Yeah, we have a lot of comments in the room. So we have, people calling in from Canada. There's some questions already. I'm going to bring that up. There's, someone, the father of 3 from Utah, and really haven't seen the boys in 3 months, in a month due to parental alienation. Someone who is adopted child, an alienated child, and now become an alienated parent. So the mother is the abuser, and she manipulated her through the extreme spiritual and psychological abuse as cult-like as they come. So this person was actually experiencing it herself as a child, and now she's an adult, seeing it happening to her children. Oh, there was consent order signed under duress. So yeah, this really serious extreme situation. There's a mother that has been alienated from only child for 2.5 years. 2.5 years is a long time to not be able to have contact with your children.
A long time.
Yeah. And then there's someone who said his son is 18 years old now and living with her son 18 years old now and living with his father and have no contact. And when she tried to contact, she was served with no trespassing papers. So it's beyond devastating. So yeah, we have a lot of these situations going on. And you were mentioning about the peer pressure. That is so interesting, because people don't realize that parental alienation doesn't happen in isolation. There's always the step parents, there's extended family. Sometimes they bring in friends. Like I had a situation where the parent would, like, let's say the father would say, "Oh, today we're gonna go to Disneyland, and I invited your best friend and his family coming along, but you're gonna be scheduled to go to your mother. I'm so sorry." So now does the child feel completely
conflicted.
Right, and the child feels like, "Oh, I have to come," or something like that. And then sometimes they get the older children and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really bad situation. So you talk about peer pressure there. And then you talk about, I think a few things I kind of forgot right now. So are there a particular type of person or characteristic in a person that makes them more prone, or situation that makes them more prone to being recruited? Because we do notice that some children are like it takes longer for them to fall for parental alienation, but some children are more susceptible to it. So are there characteristics or situations that make them more prone to this?
Well, I think there are many factors that would affect this. One would be the amount of contact with the outside world. So the amount of socialization, outside socialization, that the child has been able to experience before them. And so that's why I'm sometimes quite opposed to homeschooling, because when you have homeschooling, the children tend to be isolated. And most cults actually practice homeschooling, and they aren't following the regulations insofar as there are any regulations. They're basically teaching the the writings of the leader or whatever, but by the children not being able to go outside of the home to a school and have other friends, it's another way that, you know, their mind gets kind of closed and doesn't have the same type of experiences that other children have, you know, and that's how children grow and develop through, you know, through that kind of social contact, you know, learning how to fight, learning how to not fight, learning how to not be a bully, whatever it is. And so that, I think, is one factor if there's that kind of closeness. And then I think, you know, it depends on the age of the child. It depends on, you know, the health of the child. If there are vulnerabilities around illness that make the child more susceptible. And so, you know, I think any of those factors can affect how quickly a child may submit to the, you know, the pushes of the parent who's trying to alienate the child from the other parent.
You're talking about illness. Are you referring to like mental illness, or you're talking about also other physical illness?
The physical illness as well. I mean, either mental or physical illness, because, you know, when a child is sick, they usually feel vulnerable. You know, even if they don't necessarily have to have something that's affecting them all the time. Like when I was a child, I had asthma. And so there were times when I know I had to be home for a month at a time away from school. And I had various allergies. And so there's that kind of, you know, if children have these kind of recurring health issues, it's something that the one parent can prey upon that and can also blame the other parent for things. So it's another way to sort of victimize.
And I think you also mentioned in one of your lecture about how they particularly targeting people that are more vulnerable, maybe because subject to maybe a trauma or a change, right, in life circumstances.
Yes.
So particularly like for children when their parents are going through divorce, which is clearly for children that's a trauma situation.
Right.
So
or, you know, or even, you know, the child witnessing a lot of arguments, or even if there's domestic abuse or violence, you know, all of that is going to affect how the child is responding to things, obviously.
Right. And then you mentioned about age, like how does age affect this? You know, are you at a particular age that?
Well, I think, you know, older children, as children grow, they have more life experience, so they have more opportunity to measure things against something else, right? They have what we call reality checks, right? They're more able to communicate. They may already have a cell phone. They may have, you know, be in touch with other relatives or you know, friends outside that closed circle. So older children are able to find, I think, more ways to break out of the confines of that belief system, if we want to call it that. Whereas the younger children, you know, as we know, are more dependent on either their older siblings or the adults around them. They don't yet have a sense of self.
Yeah. And you mentioned about process. Now I've noticed that with parental alienation, it is usually a result of like a long process of conditioning. Even though the rejected parents may not have noticed it or overlooked these early signs, it's usually a long process. So in general, with cult culture, do you ever find it happens really quickly, or does it take time? How is that process?
Well, the full indoctrination takes time, right? So the recruitment may happen very quickly. Like someone may, you know, be invited to something and immediately sign up, right? Or see a flyer in a coffee shop or see something online and boom, they sign up. But they're not yet indoctrinated. They're not yet a believer and, you know, ultimately a true believer. So that indoctrination process or program is going to depend on the cult, what the cult has set into place. You know, most cults will have some kind of classes for new members or where prayer meetings or whatever it is. I mean, obviously not all cults are religious at all. So there will be some kind of program that the person is put through. There'll be lessons, there'll be trainings, there'll be people who are used as examples, right? If somebody's done something wrong and then they get a punishment, then you see, oh, well, if I do that, that's going to happen to me. So all of that takes time. Back in the day when we first were really becoming aware of cults in the 70s and 80s, the Unification Church, the Moonies, as they were called, they were probably known to be able to do the fastest indoctrination. Because they took people, in many cases, they took people away to a camp in the middle of the woods in Northern California. And once they got there, they couldn't leave. The bus that brought them there was gone. And so within 7 days, people became absolute believers, wrote their families and said, I'm with this group, I'm not coming home, bye-bye.
Wow.
And so
7 days.
they had a very, very effective program.
Wow. What is it about the program that make it so powerful?
Well, I think for one, it was the isolation.
Yeah.
I mean, people couldn't leave.
Yeah.
And then they had someone assigned to you who stayed with you absolutely all the time, even when you went to the bathroom, right? So you were never alone. And they kept you busy all the time so that you were in classes. And then they had people playing dodgeball. They were really into dodgeball. So they were playing dodgeball all the time. They were, exhausted. Then they had more classes. They were on a schedule. They had to get up early in the morning. And so as you become more exhausted and more, drawn into this, you kind of lose your critical thinking abilities, right? You're just kind of going along, okay. And that's why some of these new age programs that we see in the business world, where they take you off to a hotel somewhere, they do a very similar thing. They keep you in the hotel for 5 or 6 days. They take away your cell phone. You don't have any contact with anyone on the outside, and you're kept on a very rigid schedule. And that helps to break down the person's defenses.
My God, this is devastating actually, because for rejected parents, I know we've seen this with our children, because almost always the alienating parents will do things to take away custody, sometimes by blatantly rejecting the custody order, sometimes by pretending that the children don't want to go sometimes, and then they will control the children in so many ways, so similar to what you just said, and especially at the beginning, they put time and effort into commit to the children, so they devoted their time to pay attention to the children all the time. And my God, it's so scary, because it's exactly like you just described. And then the children not being allowed to talk to the other parents, or when the children's on the phone with the other parents, they would be monitoring, they'd be standing there watching the children, and the children being told what to say. Oh my God, it's the same. It's so scary. So what about for people that are outside watching this and seeing your family and friends starting to becoming a part of some groups? How do we recognize if this is some kind of cult or something scary, or is this simply just a happy, supporting group? How do we recognize this? And then for us as parents, for us to see, is the relationship that my children have with my ex-spouse, is it a healthy one, or is it sort of cult-like? How do we recognize this? What are some of the signs?
Well, I think if there's room for different types of activities, if there's room for questioning, if there's, like you said, if there's a time for the child to be literally away from the controlling parent and have time with the other parent, if there's, if the alienating parent is absolutely enforcing a kind of separation, well, that's a sign of not a healthy relationship, right? So if there's that kind of total control, if the child seems to be, I don't like to use the term robotic, but if the child doesn't seem to be, him or herself, she's kind of saying the things she's supposed to say. And I would suspect that other parents can recognize that, or school teachers can recognize that, when a child is kind of shut down, when their emotions are being manipulated. So I think it's important to look out for those kinds of signs. That I think for me, the most troubling part of this is that the courts don't understand this idea of coercion. And, this is the new law that they just got passed in England, where they're able to use this idea of coercion in domestic situations. And now we're trying to expand that to occults and organizations. And we're trying to get this into the United States as well. But people don't understand, and then the courts, unfortunately, don't see the many ways in which a child or another person can be coerced, which means they're led to do things against their will, although they may not even recognize it as that, right? They're being sort of forcefully pushed into certain types of thinking and behaviors. And that's really the root of all of this, is this whole idea of coercion, and sort of shaping people into the, or in this case, the children, shaping them into what you want them to be.
Yeah, and the thing is, these children can be really intelligent. They can act so smart. They can seem so independent, and that's a counterintuitive things. Is that people outside don't recognize it because they go, "Oh, this child is so smart." Like how could you say? But it can happen to anyone, right?
Well, and that, that's true for cults. People say, "Oh, those stupid cult members. You must have really been a dodo to do that," or whatever. When the studies show that who gets into cults are intelligent people, generally college-educated people, people who do not have previous psychological disorders, people who are not weak and dependent personalities. They become dependent personalities through the indoctrination program in the cult, but they often don't start out that way. So it's, I've worked with families who, whose family members went to the best schools in this country. And, intelligence has really nothing to do with it. It's basically, for cults in that world, it's running into the wrong group at the, wrong time. And somehow being drawn to whatever the message is. So yeah, a child being intelligent and maybe doing well in school is not necessarily going to be a sign. And that's what makes it more difficult sometimes to discern what's going on.
Right. And then you mentioned earlier about the behavior of the child. Sometimes the child will say things, and in parental alienation, there are 8 manifestations of children that have been affected by parental alienation. And one of them is called borrow scenario, where the children will say things that usually only adults would talk about, like maybe talking about, for example, how the court ruling regarding custody or regarding maybe child support payment or things like that. So there's exactly the kind of things that you say where, they would say things that just don't really make sense, but only, and for parents out there, if you don't know, we posted this on our website as well as our Facebook page. This has been well researched. There are 8 manifestation in behaviors of children that have been affected by parental alienation, and they are distinctly unique to children belong to parental alienation. They are not children being abused, not children that have been neglected. So if you wanted to look that up and if you want to use that to prove parental alienation in court, you definitely need to use that. So look it up in our website as well as our Facebook page. And if you have trouble finding it, let us know, just private messages. I'm going to go through some questions before we go into talking about how do we rescue these people, which is really the biggest question here. How do we rescue our children? So I'm going to just run through some of the questions, and I know there's been a lot of questions and comments out there. So let's see what we have. Do narcissists tend to exhibit cult-like behavior and delusion of grandeur? Okay, that's a very important question. We're going to talk about that. Let's see. What is the best way to overcome this? Yes, that's definitely the question that we're going to go through in a minute. Very important. Okay, someone said, my son is homeschooled in her spiritual practice. Yeah, homeschool is exactly what Dr. Lalich should talk about. It's definitely a way of isolating and controlling the environment that the child is being brought up in. My kids are distant learning like most kids right now. Yeah, exactly. Right now, during the pandemic where schooling are distant learning, so the children are staying home all the time, it's definitely an isolation environment that's perfect for parental alienation, unfortunately. Okay, my son's 18 with his dad, the same with the other parent. When I found out where he worked, I went to talk to him, and now his dad trying to get me for stalking. Okay, my son's parental grandmother was a catalyst in the alienation. Without her, I believe the situation would not have been escalated to full-blown alienation. Yes, unfortunately, there's always other people involved. And sometimes it is simply an ignorant situation, but sometimes they happen to fall for it and they become co-conspirator in this parental alienation, and it's very dangerous. Okay, another one said, my son is now 23. Yeah, it doesn't matter what age the child is. The child can be little or the child can be older. They can still be under that influence. Okay, he cut me off at 19. He still lives with his father and he changed his phone number. The biggest problem I have is not forgiving myself for seeing this right in front of my nose, and I'm having a terrible time with my huge desire to save him, feeling helpless. This is a child that told his grandma, Grandma, my mom is the nicest person I know. My heart is broken for him. How do I find tools to navigate this most painful path? Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about probably a few things. One is a question that people have been asking, which is how do we rescue our children? And the other part is how do you take care of yourself if you can't rescue the children or while you're going through the process of trying to rescue the children? So I think these are two aspects that we're gonna try to dig in. Okay, I think special needs children like autism spectrum make children more vulnerable. I think this is something that what Dr. Lalich talked about earlier, which is yes, children that have some kind of illness are more susceptible to this. Okay, another question. Very interesting this topic today. I've been estranged from my now 20 years old daughter since 2017 when she refused court order therapy. My now 17 years old son still goes back and forth. He did not drink the Kool-Aid as a father is, in my opinion, a narcissist and definitely abusive. Turns out he was grooming her for years against me, as it was the only way he could still hurt me. Will she ever see the light? The therapist says she will come around, but it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you. Okay, so will things change? That's a good question. How can we help younger sibling who is not yet alienated? Okay, there's a lot more questions, so I think let's just go on, and then we'll go through some more questions later. But okay, let's talk about yeah, actually, we did talk about the sign. This is, I think, such a critical part is to recognize the sign early, because I assume that rescue the children from the culture, the earlier is better than later, right?
Yeah.
So recognizing the sign that you talked about earlier is definitely important. But let's say you're noticing this thing in this child and you're not sure yet. You know, you see the child behaving a certain way, like you described, you know, where the child acting a little bit different than before, seem like under some kind of influence from the other spouse, the other parent. But you're not sure yet. How do you check to see if this is a problem? And you start to see signs where the other parents start to kind of deny the visitation or try to block you from having contact. How do you know that you're just kind of going crazy? How do you know if there's really something going on? Should we be asking the child? Or if we do, what kind of questions?
Well, I think each case is obviously it's going to be individual, and so I don't think there's a blanket answer. Excuse me. But I think, you know, these are tough situations because the courts are involved, which is different from most classic cult situations. You know, so perhaps you have certain visitation days, and I think that on those days it would be important to very subtly try to get the child to talk about what goes on. And, you know, if you push too hard, they'll probably get defensive, or they'll be made to feel guilty or ashamed, like it's their fault. So I think it's really important. I mean, and you'll know your child best. So I think it's very important to find these very kind of sensitive ways to broach issues. You know, it's like, where are you getting this idea from? Or, you know, can you give me some examples of things you've seen that make that true? Or, you know, whatever the case is, whatever the charges are. And so, you know, and I think I think the other thing, which probably you all do, is to keep records of everything. Every visitation, things that are said. That kind of documentation is very important, because before you see your child again, you can refer back. Oh, this is what we did last time. Let's pick up on this one, or something like that. But it's very difficult. It just as with a regular cult. You've got to. The most important thing is to maintain contact. So to do whatever you can to not lose those visitation rights, or whatever the setup is, so that you're still seeing your child, and then to like I said, very subtly try to glean information about the ways in which that child is getting manipulated or influenced by the other parent. None of this is easy, and I wish I had easy answers, but I just, it breaks my heart to hear these stories.
Yeah,
I know that's not helpful to you all, but these are difficult times, and this is a subject you don't hear much about. And
no,
so
it's not. It's not
people
talked
suffer.
about.
Parents suffer in isolation, and that's why self-care is so important, because you'll lose your mind otherwise.
Yeah, it's definitely it's the biggest elephant in the room that I could see. Really, it's so scary. There's over 20 million parents in America alone that are suffering through this, and we don't hear about it in the mainstream media at all. And then a lot of the parents, when they found out about it, they thought they are alone. They thought it's just them. There's nobody ever experienced this, but really, there's so many parents out there.
Right. I mean, it's like that's the way domestic violence was, 25, 30 years ago. Women thought they were the only one. They didn't realize, so many other women were going through the same things. And it wasn't until, really the women's movement and other movements that were able to open this up and get this out in the open, and get training by law enforcement. So when they came to houses and the woman said, "Oh, go away," the cops, looked a little more behind the door, like who's the husband behind the door or whatever. And so now we have domestic violence shelters, and we have trainings, and we have so much more awareness about that. And so this movement, the parental alienation movement, I think is really at these baby steps of trying to get this kind of awareness from the general public, and from the various helping professionals and legislation.
Right. And actually, for parents out there, we are working on a number of parental alienation awareness campaigns. If you could please mail us a hard cutout. The information is on our website, VictimToHero.com. We would love it, because we're creating an art installation for public awareness. So please send us a heart. You can be parents, you can be grandparents, you can be family, you can just be an advocate against parental alienation. So look up for the information. There's an address there that you can mail the hard cutout for our installation. So you talk about, okay, the key thing is to maintain contact with your children, and then try to be subtle about trying to understand what's going on in the other household. So let's just say you had that conversation and you can see clearly that there's things that are going on that is cult-like. How do we now, what kind of things can we do while we have the limited amount of time with our children? What kind of things can we do to help the children now?
Well, I think, sort of gently offering them counter ideas, different kinds of ideas about whatever the issues are, and whether that's through, again, it depends on the age of the child, but getting it, just as with cult members, you want to awaken their critical thinking, right? You want to get them to be thinking for themselves. And of course, age is very relevant here, but you want to, even though children are supposed to respect authority, they also need to be taught that, sometimes authority isn't functioning in your interest. And so they need to be able to question things, and maybe do it silently. I mean, because it could be a situation, if they openly question things, they'll be punished in some kind of way by the other parent, as you said. But I think giving them the support and the courage to have alternate viewpoints. That even if they're not able to express those viewpoints when they're in the other home, they're able to entertain them in their own mind, so that they know that there is this other way of being, that there really is this other parent who is not evil and who is not, whatever terms are being used. So I think it takes again a lot of very subtle, sort of just planting seeds, as we say, so that they can gain an awareness of what's happening, and eventually, hopefully, find their own way to resist. As to bringing in the courts, I mean that you probably know a lot more about that than I do, in terms of presenting evidence that could be used to change custody regulations or whatever. I mean, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah, so regarding court situation, for parents that haven't seen it, we did an interview with attorney Ashish Joshi, who talked about the strategy, high-level strategy of how to fight parental alienation in court. This Friday, we have another live event where we're going to be interviewing attorney Brian Ledmer, we're going to be talking a lot more tactical aspect of fighting parental alienation in court. So if you have questions regarding legal aspect of this, please join our event. Check out on our Facebook page, and then also you join our mailing list, and you will get updated and notified of when our event's coming up. And then you can post your live questions there. So you're talking about maintaining contact, which is the key thing. The next thing is about trying to encourage critical thinking in our children, and then having like subtle way of assessing the situation the children are in, and then teach the children to question authority, even if it's not outright, outspoken questioning. Do you know of tools or things that, ways of teaching critical thinking? I think that's such a great suggestion there.
Well, I think there are probably, again, it's going to depend on age, but there probably are books that would be useful for that. Reading something with a child and getting them to learn how to question and sort of see beyond what's right in front of your face. So hopefully there would be books like that when the child is with you, you could, read a book and show them an example. Or maybe there are, I don't know, things on the cartoon channels and things. I'm sorry, I don't have children, so I'm not totally aware of that. I mostly deal with adult populations, but I think, and I don't know if the parent can have any kind of contact, if the child is not being homeschooled and is going to a school outside the home, if the parent has access to the teachers or to the school librarian, and to be able to get that person sort of on your side to help you find ways to sort of awaken that child's critical thinking and questioning and seeing that there's, other ways of living life than, having this parent telling you about all this evil, outside the door in your mom's house or your dad's house, whatever it is. And so I think it's just, a lot of it is just staying present and really being there and not letting them forget about you and forget about times that may have been good. This is what we do in cults. We tell people, always maintain contact with the person and remind them of holidays you had together when you had a good time. When you're traveling, send them postcards or send pictures of, family gatherings or whatever when it was good. So when the child's visiting you, maybe you have photo albums you can bring out to show them, that life wasn't always the way it is now, and sort of keep jogging that person's mind about good times.
So reminder of what normal life should be or could be.
Yes.
And then you're mentioning about bringing other people in, like school. So especially like if you have a chance to be able to take your children to therapists, finding therapists that can help your children develop critical thinking, right? So is there ever a good time to confronting the children directly to say, hey, you're being influenced, you're being brainwashed? Is there ever a good time doing that? And what are the possibility of consequences if you do something like that?
Well, I don't think you want to say you've been brainwashed, or so, and again, each person has to assess that. But I think there are times when when you need to say enough is enough. Like that's not true. That's not who I am. You're parroting your father or mother or whatever. I mean, but you have to be very careful, because those kinds of confrontations can make things worse. They can make the person run the other way and not even want to see you anymore. So you really have to have a good plan about that. And, sometimes this is another thing we do with cults, which I don't know if you can apply this here, but when we have a family situation where, say, one person's in the cult and everybody else in the family is trying to deal with it, you kind of have different people playing different roles, right? You play hard cop, soft cop. So you might take, Aunt Mary, who was always that person's favorite aunt. And Aunt Mary just is always neutral, is just always there, loving Aunt Mary, neutral, agreeing with whatever you do, happy Aunt Mary, right? And then you might have Cousin Billy, who's a little more confrontational. And so if the person decides to cut off Cousin Billy, it's not the end of the world. It's not cutting off everybody, right? So that the family gets together and figures out these different roles, or maybe there's friends, because again, most cases we're talking about adults, so your best friend or your maid of honor or your whatever plays some role. And so I don't know if that can apply in this situation, depending on, when the child is visiting, if there's other relatives to have around, or friends from school or church or whatever who can take on these different roles, some as confrontational, some as neutral, to try to just keep little by little pushing things forward.
Oh, that's great, because that's exactly what the next question I was going to ask you was the role of having friends and extended family to help in this. Because like you said, build your child critical thinking, and also keeping that world, that's social environment in your household, in your side of the family, to be normal and to still have different multiple members, so that the child is still attached to different people, making it less isolated, right? Because the goal of the other person is to isolate the child from you.
Right.
So if you can create more context, that's going to help, right?
Yes.
And then there's a few questions in the chat room about the leaders of the cult. What are the characteristics of the leader, and are they always mentally ill, or like they have some kind of personality disorder, or what is it about them that making them creating this cult thing?
Well, most cult leaders are narcissists. They're absolutely ego-driven. Many of them are, psychopaths or sociopaths, which means they have a very evil side to themselves, and that they don't have empathy. They don't have feelings like you and I do. They're good manipulators. Sometimes they can be very charming, and then the next time they can be absolutely monstrous, and you never really know what to expect. In my opinion, most cult leaders are just straight out con artists. They're people who want to control and have power over other people, and whether that's for money or whether it's for sex or whether it's just to have power, they're generally completely ego-driven. I don't consider them, mentally ill. They may have psychological disorders, but they're generally not crazy people. They may have moments of delusion, especially the longer a cult leader is able to go on and not have any checks and balances, not be held accountable. They can get a little, they can get caught up in their own delusion and caught up in their own fantasies. But in the most part, they're very strategic, and they're very ego-driven, and they are just people who are authoritarian and want to control. And sometimes we see signs of this when we can go back and examine their childhood. Like these are the people who kill animals when they're little kids, and those are typically signs of someone who's going to grow up to be a psychopath. But they're generally not good people. They're generally not good people.
Actually,
And
that definitely describe a lot of things that have been done in research about parental alienation, which is the alienating parents tend to have, they definitely do this out of spite. They're doing this out of revenge against the other parents. It's not because they care or love about the children. It's
right,
really, and yeah, and there's a lot of sense of power. It's about control, things like
right.
that. So what you describe really align with that. Um, I'm going to just run through a few questions. I do have more questions about what the consequences on the people that become affected, but let's just go through some other questions. I'll just run through this. Okay, are all cult leaders mentally ill? Is there no reasoning with them? My daughter is 17 and a half. Is it too late? When a child visits and isolate himself during the whole stay, what do you do? He won't eat dinner with us. He won't enjoy TV time. He just stay in his room. Okay, actually, can we address this question? So we talk about, when you have a little bit of time with your child, who is, that being influenced in the other household, but when the child's with you, the child just shut down, go into the room, close the door, play video games or whatever, on the phone with the other parents the whole time or whatever. Um, and we talk about trying to create critical thinking and all that kind of thing, but if the child refuses contact during this time, even though the child is in your house, what can you do during this time?
Well, I think that may be a situation where perhaps other people could be brought in. Like, did the child have friends, in the neighborhood or in school, who could come over and try to visit, or invite the child, come over to our house and have pizza or whatever. Um, you know, if that exists, I think that would be one way to at least get the child out of the bedroom and off that computer and off the phone with the other parent. Um, Other than that, I don't know what, if they're absolutely refusing to communicate. I mean, that must be the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I think, I think again, maybe, leaving things in that room that maybe they could look at, right? Leave a photo album in the room of some past times together, or a memento from childhood or something like that. So even though you're not aware, you're not seeing it, maybe, while he or she's in that room, she looks through that photo album and says, oh yeah, it wasn't so bad. And so I guess you have to think of really creative ways to try to make contact. Yeah, and obviously finding good therapists, especially in a situation like that, would be helpful if you can get agreement for that to occur.
Yeah. So I interviewed some parents, and I found a number of parents who have reunited with their children, who talk about one of the things they suggested was that helped with them, especially with teenagers, is to ask the teenager to go on a drive, because it's very hard to have children to have a conversation with you, because they're so distracted, and especially if they're under influence. So if you get them onto some kind of activities that are interesting to them, then having a conversation while they go on a drive is a lot easier than having a conversation by just sitting down facing each other at home. Also, we interview Karen Woodall, she's a psychotherapist specialized in parental alienation, and she also talk about, like you mentioned, leaving something in the room or bringing up something without pressuring the child to talk to you, but bring different things so that getting the child to start to open up with you. We're gonna have a follow-up interview with with Karen Woodall, specifically about therapeutic parenting, meaning how do you deal with the children during this time. So, like I said, make sure you sign up to our mailing list so that you can be invited to the live interview. I'm going to go on with some more questions. So,
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, please.
Has anyone, one thing I use a lot with former cult members when they get out is workbooks, different kinds of workbooks, PTSD workbooks, stress and anxiety workbooks, etc. And I'm wondering if anyone in your field there has created any kind of workbooks geared toward different ages that the kids could be given So when they come, like a puzzle book. And I mean, I know when I was a kid, I loved crayons and puzzles and, all of that kind of match the dots. And if there would be some kind of workbooks that could be created that, that gear toward the issues that need to be addressed with the child, and getting them to think in different ways than what they're being told in the other home. So it's just a thought I had, that might be something that could be useful at some point.
That's such a great question, and it's such an important idea. If any parents know, can you let me know? So someone said that Amy Baker created a book. I'm not sure what she meant by that, like what kind of book. I know Amy Baker, Dr. Amy Baker, we interviewed her, and she had a number of books, but not for children, like for adults, for parents. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant, Rachel. So if you know of a book that Dr. Amy Baker created for children, please clarify. I would love to know about that. I know that Dr. Richard Worshock has a video called Welcome Back Pluto that is specifically made for children to watch and help making the children realize and question things that the children are being faced, and then sort of encourage critical thinking, like you mentioned. So for them to recognize how people can be influenced, because a lot of the time the children don't even know that they are being influenced. Right. They feel like they just, this is my idea. I don't want to be with you. They don't, right. And they think that they're so smart, and so they, especially teenagers, they don't feel like they, yeah. Okay, so someone said, Rachel said, the book is called Getting Through My Parents' Divorce. Okay, so I haven't seen that book, I haven't read it, but if anyone wanted to check that out, one of the parents in the room mentioned the book. And then someone said, Welcome Back Pluto is old. Yeah, I also heard that feedback that it's kind of old, and I think some people said that their children get bored and don't sit through the videos. And then a workbook for children coping with divorce, parental alienation, and loyalty. Yes, that would definitely be important. Yeah, we need new videos to teach kids. I think this is definitely, thank you so much. This is a huge, important suggestion. So I'm going to definitely reach out to the experts in the field and see if we can develop something like this, because this is so helpful. That's such a great suggestion. Thank you so much, really. Okay, let's see if we can, and yeah, if you have any other question, please, that question was amazing. So if you have more idea or question, please bring up. I'm going to just go through some more questions here. My gosh, I think I'm lost track of, there's too many, so I'm not sure I can go back to so many. I'm going to just randomly pick this. Can this be put through from a different angle? Are there any more chances to get the court to listen if, instead of reporting parental alienation, the alienated parent reports domestic abuse done through children? Children suffer, but parents' pain is devastating too. Yes, talking about the court situation, we recently posted, for example, a new post on our website is about approaching it from a custody interference, for example, and it's applied to different states. We listed a number of states based on whoever requesting information from us. So if your state is not listed, make sure you comment there so that we know that you wanted the information, and then we'll find that state and post it for you. And then also, like I mentioned, we have interviewed attorney Ashish Joshi. We also interview, I think, another attorney that we posted recently, specifically to do with Florida. If you have any particular state that you wanted, like I mentioned, put the question through. Anyone that you wanted us to interview, let us know so that we can find the right people to answer your question for you. And then, like I mentioned, on Friday, we have the interview with attorney Brian Ludler, specifically about court. Okay, let's go on with my question. Where can we find the right therapist to help us in our area? Nobody seems to know. Yeah, that's a problem, is parental alienation is so counterintuitive that it's very difficult, and a lot of therapists get sort of complacent. They just feel like, oh, I'm very experienced dealing with people for a long time. They don't realize that with parental alienation, the situation is very unique. And a lot of people, when they see a child reject a parent, they immediately thought, oh, that parent has done something wrong. And even therapists sometimes end up becoming part of the alienating team. They actually make things worse. So finding the right therapist is very difficult. Specifically to do with Lansing, Michigan, I don't really know right now. One of the projects that we are working on is trying to pull together a database for therapists and lawyers that are especially know about parental alienation. We have trouble pulling this, but we are trying to compile this. So if anyone have any suggestion for good professionals in this field, please let us know, because we are trying to compile this for you, for the parents out there.
And
okay.
I just, if I could add,
Yes.
one of the things that I've done in my books related to looking for therapists for former cult members is I've created these checklists. Like, these are things you should ask a therapist, because you're basically, my dog is getting, you're basically hiring that person, right? They're there to serve you. So you get to ask all the questions you want before you, get on with someone. So, Ali, shush. So I think, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So I think if by perhaps having a checklist on your website or somewhere that, parents who are just starting out with this or whatever can have, that's handy. Ali, hush. For what to, so that you're picking a therapist who can really help you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, thank you. So checklist. I know that someone that I know, I think Kara has a checklist. I'm gonna talk to her about that, and then we might be developing. Like maybe we're gonna ask her to share her list, and if there's more, we're gonna add to that list, and we'll post that for you guys. We every time we interview experts, we do ask, what should we ask before we hire someone like a lawyer or therapist. So I think that's a great idea. We're gonna post a checklist for that. Thank you. Okay.
Playing with my dogs.
It's okay. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see. Oh, we're gonna run out of time soon anyway, but I'm just gonna run through a few more things. As much as I want to reach out to my alienated children, I know the extreme emotional abuse they will receive from their mother if they show any sign of affection towards me. Okay, that's a very good awareness. To look at your children with a sense of compassion and to understand that your children are just victims. So to think not just that you wanted to reach out to your children, but understand the impact it can create for the children. I think that's a very good awareness there. So to ensure that they are not on the receiving end of their wrath, the safest thing for me to do for them right now is to refrain from contacting them. I know it is best for them, but it's deeply hurting me. It's true King Solomon and the baby dilemma. Okay, so for this, I just want to comment that children nowadays are I don't know how old the children are. Children nowadays are very digital aware. So that means that they are on social media, they are on a lot of different platforms. So, and most of the time they will be curious about you. They're probably going to be Googling you. So creating some kind of digital footprint is very important. And by that, I mean, maybe having a website, maybe posting YouTube videos. Try not to create any sense of guilt on your children. So, instead of focusing on the negative, focusing on the positive things, and then live your life, the best you can. Because if you can shine and prosper and thrive, then it's something for your children to look at and realize that they're looking at things wrong. Things that they heard about you are not correct. So that's important. Okay, another thing.
And it also seems that would be a situation where using other friends or relatives to be in touch with the child if you can't, if you really feel that you can't, because of the detrimental effects for the children, that by having, other people from outside the alienating parents' realm, at least will give them some contact with different views and different opinions and different experiences.
Yeah, that's the thing. I am an adult child of alienation, and it's so crazy because despite so much education and everything and life experiences, I never question it as an adult. I never realized it, and the first time I realized it is some family member contacted me and said, "Hey, this is what happened," and that's when I woke up and I'm going, "Oh my God, I was alienated." And I never question. I always go, "Oh yeah, that parent's evil. That's a monster." I never question it. It's so crazy. So yeah, having an extended family, having some friends, somebody else to kind of alert gently. I mean, don't make the other parents an evil person. Just make the child, like you mentioned, critical thinking. Like alert the child the critical thinking. So sort of giving a sense that there's something more than just what they heard. Then perhaps that could help. So yeah, definitely a good suggestion.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, too many questions. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to go through this, and we ran out of time. Could I just ask you though, what are the potential impact? Let's say if you have a chance of being able to rescue the child, let's say through the court system, and be able to have the child. Oh my God. Amber Alert on my phone. Okay, so let's say if we are able to rescue our child somehow through the court system and have more contact, or even like some parents will get a short, brief sole custody period. What are the potential impact on the children during this time, and how do we help the children recover? Because even though we might have the children physically, but how do we help the children mentally?
I'm not sure of your question. You mean because suddenly they're in the opposite situation?
Yeah, now the children, let's say if we can get the children back to the court system, but really their mind are still influenced, right? They still, like, what is the long-term impact of that, of the court culture?
Well, it takes time, and I think that's, a great time when some kind of workbooks or programs on the internet could be helpful, games or whatever that could start to get the child thinking in a different way. I mean, when someone comes out of a cult, they have to unpack, what they've been taught. They have to kind of take it apart and then put it back together again. So I think that, the same thing would be true here. It would be give them opportunities to talk about it, to grieve if they have to grieve, to be able to express whatever it is they want to express about it, and have a supportive environment. That would be obviously the most important thing. But and again, this will depend on the age of the child. But for former cult members, talking is and support groups have been some of the best things. And so with children, I think it'll be a little bit different. But I think slowly exposing them to different ideas and different ways of thinking.
I think in one of the lectures that you did, you mentioned that the cult culture stunt the members' psychological and emotional growth, right? Especially in children. So right. So if you're dealing with the children, maybe the children is teenager, but in certain aspect, right, mentally or psychologically, they actually a lot. Right. So when you deal with them, you actually have to think about it that way, that you actually, even though your child might be teenager, they're thinking on certain things maybe just at the level of a 7 years old, right? Or 5 years old or something like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like when I was in a cult, I was 41 when I got out, and I felt like I was 16, because I had 10 years of, being shut out. So that's a very good point, to try to meet them at the stage that they're at. And that, that's why I think my book, Escaping Utopia, which is about children who were born and raised in cults. Again, I realize it's somewhat different, but that may be helpful for people to see what those people go through when they get out of the cults. And sometimes they're adolescents, sometimes they're adults. But yeah, the development has been stunted for sure, because they aren't having it's what I was saying earlier, they aren't having the same kind of social interactions and being able to develop the coping mechanisms that we learn to develop as children. And so they need to kind of go through that process again.
Thank you so much. I know we ran out of time. Thank you so much for being here today. I really
thank you for
appreciate
inviting me.
it.
This is really enlightening for me as well.
Thank you. And thank you, parents.
Please keep me on your mailing list.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone. There's someone said I was close to tears, and now I'm laughing. Thank you. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of comments, and I'm going to try to go through the questions later, and if there's something particular that I could compile, I'll present to you, and if you have any more insights from members. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here. please share, and then also, like I said, join into our mailing list so that you can get notified of future events. And see you guys on Friday. It's a discussion on legals. And thank you so much, Dr. Lalich.
Thank you, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
Wear your mask. All right, bye-bye.